I'll be the first person to admit that drugs are an important part of my life, but they're not necessarily a big part. So I've gotten to a point where there are a handful of substances that really improve my life in different scenarios. And that's what I try to stick to. I'm Yuki, joined by my co-host Reggie, and you're listening to Modern Day Hippie, the podcast about doing drugs in a responsible, fun, and safe way to improve your life. Before we jump into today's episode, a quick legal disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging format. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way. Now, with that, we hope you enjoyed today's show. What's up, y'all? It's Yuki here with another microdose for y'all. Today, I'm going to be talking about the importance of taking breaks from drugs. Now, aside from the obvious that, of course, you should be taking breaks from pretty much any substance that you're doing, I want to specifically touch on the substances that we talk about a lot on this show, specifically psychedelics, things like mushrooms and LSD. These are substances that, in theory, you could be taking on a very regular basis with short breaks in between and be totally fine in the long run. But there are a couple of reasons why I think it's really important to give yourself at least one or two more extended breaks from even substances that are really positive and good for you. And I'll be going through those today. First and foremost, it's super important to give your brain and your body the opportunity to go back to a baseline state. Even if chemically your body is fine and has ejected all these chemicals and you wouldn't show positive on a drug test or anything like that, there's also something to be said about letting your memories refresh a little bit. Obviously, as time goes on, you tend to forget specific details about things. And that can be really helpful when you are taking a substance on a more regular basis the other times throughout the year. It can give you a little bit of a chance to forget maybe some of the nuances. And when you start doing that substance again, to find them back out, be reminded of them, and have that nice experience. Now, something that I noticed, especially when I was quitting alcohol, was even long after a period of a substance being really out of your body and being gone, more or less, there can still be a period of a very small layer of effect from these substances. Now, what I mean by that was with alcohol, I found out that it was kind of maintaining this 1% layer of brain fog and just not feeling 100%, even weeks, and I dare say 1 or 2 months after I stopped drinking. It was to a point where I hadn't realized that all my years that I had been drinking every couple of days, that I was never letting my body get back to its normal baseline state. And even a week or two, obviously you feel a lot better after that week or two break, but I was so impressed by how much I continued to feel better even several weeks after I decided to stop drinking. Other substances can stay in your body for a long period of time, or the effects of them can linger. So a classic example here is MDMA. It's recommended you wait about 3 months between taking different doses of MDMA, but even ones that have much shorter time spans on the drug itself, as well as the effects on your body, just give yourself a bit of space and time to recharge from those and take a moment for yourself. The second reason why I think it's super important to take more extended breaks from drugs in general is because this is an especially good opportunity for you to observe how your brain and your body are reacting to not using a drug for, let's say, a month at a time. To me, this is one of the strongest indicators of how responsible you can actually be with your drug use, which is something that we really hold above all else on this podcast. It's just the fact that when you are doing drugs, you should be doing them as responsibly as possible and making sure that you can prove to yourself that you can go weeks, or I would say even up to a month is usually what I try to go for. You can use that time to prove that you're totally all right. You are not dependent on these substances at all. And you can observe that if you're regularly thinking about a specific substance, wishing that you had it in different settings, whether you're vibing at home one night, whether you're out partying, that can be a really good signal to yourself for when you do go back to doing drugs again. Maybe you need to be a little bit more careful with a specific substance, or maybe there are ones that just you realize don't do a whole lot for you and you don't need to do them as often or at all. And it's these breaks that really have given me time to reflect on what are the substances that I enjoy doing the most and what are ones that I can reduce my usage of, either for positive or for negative reasons. I mean, the whole reason I ended up quitting alcohol permanently was because I took an extended break from alcohol and actually every other drug, because this was around the holidays. So I didn't do any substance for, I think, almost 2 months at that point. And alcohol was one that I realized I did not miss at all. And combined with my epiphanies that I had about it, I just decided to cut it out of my life completely. And that was hands down one of the best decisions I ever made. On the other hand, these breaks have made me realize a lot of the positive effects that I get from mushrooms and the quality that they have to give me a mental reset and a small dose of reflection that I can have, once a week or once every other week, and really appreciate that for what it is. You're at the club and the music is thumping, but you've got nothing left in the tank. So what do? Sniff some cacao. Yup, you heard that right. Sniff some cacao. It's the hottest new trend in the club and party scene. One bum-sized sniff of raw chocolatey powder contains the caffeine equivalent to a half cup of coffee, and boom, it hits instantly. And the best part is you can now sniff cacao anytime, anywhere. Right out in the open, in front of the DJ booth or the stage, even at the VIP table with your friends. Now, how does that happen without drawing unwanted attention? Snogo's spring-loaded bump straws make it possible. These classy, triple mirror polished bump straws are the safest, most discreet way to enjoy sniffing cacao. In fact, you've most likely already seen people wearing Snogo's bump straws as pendants around their necks without even knowing it. Discover why sniffing cacao using Snogo bump straws is being called the biggest revolution in partying since the invention of rock and roll. Jump on over to snogostraws.com to learn more. That's SNOGOSTRAWS.com and use discount code MDH15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order. The third reason you should be taking breaks from your drugs is quite simple. It's just to keep it magical, keep those experiences exciting. As Reggie put it on one of our episodes, you don't want to take the magic out of the magic mushrooms, and too much of anything is just never a good thing, even with something that is as safe and reliable and good for you as psychedelics. You don't want to overdo it. You'll get to a point where if you do it too often, it just stops being as unique, it stops being as special, and then you lose, I think, a lot of the good that can come from those substances. The fourth and final reason I want to share with you guys today is just reminding yourself that there's more to life than drugs. I'll be the first person to admit that drugs are an important part of my life, but they're not necessarily a big part. So I've gotten to a point where there are a handful of substances that really improve my life in different scenarios. And that's what I try to stick to for using these various substances. But also when I take these breaks, it shows me that there's just as much in life to be happy about, to be excited about, ways to have fun. And it doesn't all have to be about drugs. I do think drugs can improve and make more fun a lot of situations, but you definitely don't need to rely on them. And there are just plenty of other things to care about and kind of fill your mind with. Now, when I'm talking about these long breaks, how long am I actually talking about? To me, a good baseline is having about a month straight of doing no drugs at all. This can sound like a long time, but I think the easiest way to go about these breaks is to actually build them into aspects of your life that you already have. So my golden example here is taking a break over the holiday season. So a lot of holidays are during the winter season. So, around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and whatever holidays that you celebrate during that time period. And that can be a great opportunity to take that month-long break from any substances, because usually people will spend that time with their family, with their friends, hopefully not getting too fucked up or anything like that. I think the one exception here is that a lot of families and people will be drinking alcohol. And obviously, if that's something you still want to partake in, that's all good. But the important aspect here is that you are consciously taking a break. Like you are telling yourself, I'm going to take a break from X, Y, and Z substances and give my body a break and my mind the opportunity to get to a reset state. If you can do that with all substances, I think that's ideal. But even if it's everything but alcohol, that's still a big improvement over doing other substances on a very regular basis. think that 1 month break, at least once a year like that, is solid. I think twice a year is also not a bad habit to get into. So maybe you do one around the holidays and one at some point during the summer. Obviously, this is going to depend a lot on how you're actually spending your summers. Like if you're out partying with your friends and doing things like that, you're not going to want to take a break. And look, I get that. Like I've talked about before, the drugs that we do and the amount that we do is so heavily influenced by our environment, where we're at, what we're doing, and who we're spending that time with. Another way to think about this is if you go for a longer vacation, let's say you take 2 weeks off of work or something like that, that can be another great opportunity to spend that time not doing any drugs, go travel or spend time with family or however you want to spend that time. And I know a lot of young people, they'll go on these trips, they'll go on absolute benders and get totally fucked up. Like, I just don't think that's the best idea. You can kind of do that any weekend when you're at home and abuse your body like that, more or less. But when you're taking a vacation, like actually take the time to just be like appreciative and grateful for your body and give it that space to relax and recover. The final hack you can kind of put around taking breaks from drugs is doing what I call grind seasons. So this could be a period of a couple weeks where you tell yourself that you're going to intentionally focus a lot on work or a specific project or something that is really productive, and that you're going to say no to more like social things and hangouts. That doesn't mean you have to be a shut-in the whole time, but I definitely find that when I'm really intentional about entering a period of a month or two where I want to be extremely productive, then that can also be a great time to use that as an excuse to be like, hey, I'm also just not going to do drugs for this period of time. And not doing drugs combined with this kind of growth and productivity are going to work really well together. Just to recap, the 4 reasons why I think it's super important to take breaks from drugs, any drugs, no matter how positive or negative they might be, are number 1, let your brain and your memories get back to a baseline state related to that drug. Number 2, it gives you the opportunity to observe how you feel without the drug. This can be a really strong indicator of if you're getting reliant on certain substances or if there are ones that you can just cut out of your life entirely. Number 3 is to keep the drugs magical. So you don't want to take the magic out of magic mushrooms by taking them too often. And finally, these are great opportunities to remind yourself that there's a lot more to life than drugs, and you don't necessarily need drugs to have fun or live a good and happy and fulfilling life. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and got something from it. If you did, please show us a little bit of love on the podcast or on the YouTube. It means the world to us. And that's today's pod. Truly, thank you for listening to the show. We seriously fucking appreciate it. If you want to help us out, just leaving a rating or a comment, you know the drill, would be incredibly helpful. But more importantly, share the knowledge and the love with your friends. Make sure they're getting the information they need on this topic that is so underserved and underappreciated in today's society. We'll see y'all next week.